Good afternoon, and welcome to the International Poetry Forum at the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate Judy Collins. This is such a special performance. As many of you know, the International Poetry Forum just relaunched this year after a 15-year hiatus. We were initially launched as a special project of Carnegie Library on this very stage in 1966. And our fourth performer ever was one of the great folk musicians, really one of the great American musicians of all time, Judy Collins. So it's just wonderful. It's such a full circle moment having her back here, and we're so glad to be a part of the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books. I know that at least one person in the audience was at the two previous Judy Collins International Poetry Forum events in 1966 and 1969, and that would be the founder of the International Poetry Forum, Dr. Samuel Hazo. Now, Judy Collins is someone who needs no introduction, so all I'll say is that we're lucky today. I've been reading through the archives of the Post-Gazette, and in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of snobbery around music, especially folk music, by the purportedly high culture crowd and poetry. And today, I don't think that snobbery exists. I think many of us are very willing to accept music as a twin art to poetry. And a lot of the reason why that's the case is owed to people like, and indeed especially, Judy Collins, who's one of the great songstresses, one of the great musicians, performers, writers, artists, and certainly poets of our age. So we are delighted to have her back to celebrate her new collection of poetry. Sometimes It's Heaven. We are just so grateful to all of you for being here. And if you'd please join me in welcoming to the stage Judy Collins.
That's very kind of you. What a lovely introduction. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say, rose and flows, you can sing with me. Rose and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air. Feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, and now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's clouds' illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Now, I will tell you that I often do these poems now, sitting at a piano and putting music in the background. You can hear it in your mind. And I wanted to say that I have a little story. First of all, I want to tell you that I'm in a period of great loss and mourning. My husband died in December of 24. And he was we were together 46 years, and so, of course, it's hard, very hard, especially that I didn't ever think he was going. I mean, he had no reason to go, except for an undiagnosed cancer, and we don't get into that, but I will tell you that I have said this to many people in many concerts because of what I know about grief. I will employ you tonight as my grief group. So I want to thank you for coming and joining me for that. Thank you. he has an important part in this, which is that in 2017, 16 or 17, he said to me, I was beginning to be my routine of writing to get songs out of it for the next album. And was working on that. And I said to him, well, it was the beginning of the year, which, you know, in the old days in school, don't you do that? You always take a brand new notebook out the first of the year, and you plan to write it full of everything, and you don't usually. I mean, you hope to, and I think that's worth something, at least planning on doing it. And so he said to me, I said, well, I'll do 90 in 90 days. He said, well, why don't you write 365 poems, because then you'll have a poem every day, and you'll have a year's worth of work, and you'll have probably a book of poetry. And that's what happened. First of all, I hijacked about 20 songs from the poems and created them on an album called Spellbound, which you can go and get in the internet or somewhere. I have no idea where you get it, honestly. It's such a mystery to me now. But I have some if you wanted to call my face page and ask me about them. So I did that. And then the book turned, my agent said, well, you've got all these poems, why don't we put it in a poetry book? And I said, okay. So I will begin and tell you that these are random ideas, random people I've known in my life, random things that I think about a lot. This is called O'Keeffe. Looking at O'Keeffe, I see white bones in a blue sky, on the red rocky ridge below the clouds as the heavens bellow wind through the hollows. Under the shelter of shadows, dreams like raw whiskey spilled in the sand. You saw flowers the way you saw fear, the way you saw dreams. Rivers of crimson soaked in tangerine. The stamens of the petals, the colors of orchids, the spotted violet on the bright green ground, the vagina flaring in the bosom of the rose, the curl of the bone in the face of the steer, the brush in your thin hands, your long legs running from Stieglitz, from the galleries, from the power, and those who would crush you, grabbing the brush from your hand, sapping the cobalt from the tube, to cut you like a bloom of purple from the blazing violet. 40 days, 40 nights, and you were gone into the dust of summer and the clear skies of winter, into the canyons of Santa Fe from the skyscrapers of New York City, into the desert where you painted yourself into a corner of the world where almost no one could chase you. You settled the score. You wanted more. I want more. I also like to pause and tell you jokes. When the COVID started, you're all here, which means that you survived the COVID and probably many other things. I mean, I always say everybody has something, which is why we're all a grief group, that we all have those places where the world shatters and we have to find a way to put it back together. I'm doing that right now. I had a dream about Lewis 6 months ago. 6 months after he died, actually. I felt he kept me waiting. I don't know why. But I was very happy to see him. And I know he's somewhere in the Bardo. Isn't that where they hang out and renew their faith and apologize to those they've forgotten? I think that's what happened. But anyway, somebody called me right after the pandemic started, and he's a friend of mine named Jim. He's a very good writer, and he's a smart person, but he kind of is off on the, a tandem somewhere. And so he called me and he said, hi. This was just after we'd locked down, March of 2020. Maybe it was March 10th or something that he called me. And he said, hi, how are you? I said, well, I'm figuring this out. And he said, well, I have a problem. And I said, what's your problem? We all have a problem right now. And he said, well, I can't stop smoking. And I said, do you want to? He said, no. I'm glad you're an audience who understands that. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, stopping smoking, even harder than quitting drinking. By the way, I'm 86, I just remembered that. And thank you. And 86 is, of course, the new 27. And I want to thank my friend Ed. I think I want to thank Mr. Hazo. He brought me to this wonderful city in 20. I always get confused. Let's see, it was 1961, and he called me and he said, I like your album. And he said, he invited me here, and I became friends with him and his wonderful wife and his little son who was born. And I came here, not always, but sometimes, right? Let's give a round to this wonderful man. So I said to my friend, you better go to see my doctor if you're thinking about quitting smoking. So he went to Dr. Brun, and Dr. Brun said, well, if you really have this on your mind, you have to think about it. If any of us takes a cigarette into their bodies, God takes an hour of your life and gives it to Keith Richards. This poem is called Eternal Waters. We threw flowers in the river, red carnations, purple roses, flowers floating by the ashes from your journey through the fire. Hello. Ashes in the water with the roses and carnations, dust to water, dust to dust, in the current of the river, drifting down beside the cities with the roses and carnations, purple roses, red carnations on the way down to the ocean. Flowers in the ashes and the ashes in the water, red and purple in the waters of the river. And the dust, dust to dust, and dust to ashes in the waves of the Atlantic, in the rivers of our childhoods in the mighty Mississippi, red and purple flowers floating, all headed to the waters in the surfs of California, to the men in wetsuits riding through the red and purple roses. On the waves above your ashes and the flowers and the water in the dust of you, not living. No longer are you surfing, no longer are you swimming, no longer are you singing, no longer are you flowering red and purple like the flowers that linger here. When you have the rivers and the oceans you have swum, and the waves of oceans near you, and the flowering all around you, forever floating in eternal waters, you are here. This is called Gene Hackman Has Dinner. Bless him, poor man. I saw this splendid actor once sitting alone during the holidays in a New York diner, his head moving up and down over a plate of what I'm sure was the specialty of the day. I didn't want to bother him, of course, and for years I've regretted that I did not say hello in the diner through the window of the guy sitting there talking to the waiter. Who is the painter who does that scene? It's a bleak picture, a sad picture. And as I'm on the road much of the year, traveling by myself and often eating my breakfast and lunch alone in a hotel, I know the feeling Gene Hackman must have had. The crew of the movie that he was making was probably off somewhere, and he was probably on his way to a hotel, a single room. It's a plumb lonely feeling, and I would hope that if somebody sees me hunkered over the specialty of the day, they might drop a quick hello, at least in memory, of Gene Hackman's solitary dinner at the diner. I sang this at my wedding to Louis, my marriage. We spent the first 18 years living in sin. I met him 4 days before I got sober in 1978. And then we were married for 27 years. We actually had a big service at St. John the Divine's in New York City. We had 500 people. I don't know who they were. The night before our wedding, I dreamed of falling stars, and all the souls that I have loved came bending to my window, a galaxy of wishes as far as I could see. I thank the gods and goddesses for bringing you to me. You are a gift to me, fairly given out of heaven. Nothing I did before could have earned your love. Somewhere a prayer was heard, someone must have seen me kneeling, and you were there for me, my own true love. I was a gypsy soul when I found you in the darkness, when you found me in the darkness, chasing the shadows. I've had a cold for 3 weeks. I was coughing like a maniac. It's going now, and you are not infected, I promise you, because I'm not anymore either. I saw you wore no mask, and your armor was of moonlight. When I embraced your love, I was free at last. And it's time to celebrate our wedding after all these many years, to celebrate our lives together. I'll marry you for love, I'll marry you for laughter, I'll marry you ever after. This is called Leonard's Dance. I like this microphone much better. Leonard's Dance. You know, I met Leonard in 1966 when his best friend called me and said, earlier she had told me that all of his friends were very upset because he was going nowhere. And they all thought he was the brightest and smartest person they'd ever met, so they were very disappointed. And she said, I said, what's the matter with him? She said, well, he writes these poems and they're very obscure. And then he came to see me and I said, when he came to the door, I said, I don't care if he can't write songs. We'll think of something. This is called Leonard's Dance. He wore a suit and tie the day he died, working on another of his songs, one about the future and the past, one that sang of hope when all was dashed. Some say till you've given up the fight you will never sleep the livelong night, flashes of your unforgiven sin, moments of uncertainty fly in. Times of deep injustice will prevail. You will never live until you fail. We have just the moment when we smile. We have nothing left but guilt and guile. Why not sing your treasures so they shine? Why not revel in your fragile mind? No one else can take you on this ride, so just give it up and swim the tide. Dress up, just as Leonard did to die. Say your kind hellos and sweet goodbyes. So the world has finally understood everyone is headed for wormwood. But the sky is up there every day, wandering from rain to sunny skies. Let the darkness deepen in your heart, so a light can shine upon your art. Sanctify the moment when we part. Cherish all the lightness at the start. Whether it's romance or a crusade, do your best and dance in the parade. Seldom do you find the gold you seek. Dig for all your worth into the creek. Rivers flowing by take every turn through the willows, through the sheltered fern. So wear a suit and tie and walk the walk. There is more to life than sleepless nights. Leonard let his lyrics fall like sand. Let us know the future is unplanned. And here's a poem about my friend David Crosby. Crosby was a friend of mine, and I'm just recording one of his most recent songs, one after he left the group, and it was an album called Crosby. Maybe you listened to it at some point. It's wonderful, and it has a wonderful song on it called Radio, and I've recorded it with Graham Nash. So we were paying homage to David Crosby. It's called Cross. A bright and flashing light flying through the night of stars and old guitars, bound for Earth and Mars. He was out of sight. He knew how to fight. He knew how to write, lived with all his might each and every night. Knew that he was right, sparkled with delight. He was like a kite in skies of broken light. He was like a king, ruling on the wing, fighting everything, God, and how he could sing. The girl that I was had the courage to live fast and wild. She tore into life with nerve and was never defiled. She shouted her love and her anger like she was possessed, took chances and changes. They were always part of her quest, as though the chances she took had never had penalty. And always she had secret lovers, hidden obsessively. The girl that I was had no fears about life or of death. She was willing to run in the wind and exhaust her last breath. Her eyes had no shadows. Her heart wasn't broken with grief. Her meandering glance saw no menace. Her anger was brief. That girl, when I need her, if only it could be now. I would bring her to stand with me, and then I would give her a bow. She was the beginning of everything. She was the best. I try to live up to her. She was the girl from the West. And now I know you like to take deep breaths and breathe out and then sing, "Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls have picked them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?" That was great. Thank you. Gandhi was asked what he thought of Western civilization, and his answer was, "I think it would be a good idea." Agatha Christie. You know, I am perplexed and obsessed with Agatha Christie. I mean, think of all these books that she's written. Think of all these mysteries that we watch on television that are by Agatha Christie. Poirot. The other one? Yes, Miss Marple. Thank you so much. Agatha Christie in the dark of the night, flying from Oslo with all my might, comfy as an English cup of tea, reading tonight will set me free. Free to drift in and out of sleep, free to slumber, free to leap out of the window above the blue sea. The whales are swimming just for me. I'm cozy in comfort, I'm leaning back as the light dies away. The sky pitched black, she's amazing and crisp. She's clever and clean. She's thoughtful and funny, is Agatha Queen. She's Poirot and Miss Marple behind. She's totally free to go out of her mind. I'm reading her books like a lesson in crime, a lesson in language, a lesson in time. I read Hugh Fraser, who reads me to sleep. The reader, Hugh Fraser. You know this, don't you? Do you read Agatha on your headphones? Some of you. I'm reading her books like a lesson in crime, a lesson in language, a lesson in time. The reader, Hugh Fraser, who reads me to sleep. He's read every book. Awake and asleep, I doze off, restless to get back to all that English trifle. The sound of old intelligence. This is a poem from Mark Roscoe, the painter. I like the guy in the black hat leaning over from his narrow waist. In front of the Roscoe, the red of the painting, the white, the border between a fuzzy, a line, blue eyes, wandering the colors, wandering me on the way to the next, an orange and black painting, and bending again, celebrating the edge, edging toward me. A place beyond abstraction, the artist as underdog, the audience as overdog, Roscoe taking his life in his studio, slitting his wrists. It has to be beautiful, even in death. This is called Southern Comfort. Oh, you gave me Southern comfort and you made me feel alive. You were singing like a banshee in the wind when I arrived. You were brilliant. You were flying. You were giving everything when I saw you there in Monterey. You had not long to live. We were sitting at the Troubadour and watching Polly play. I was drinking like I always did that night and every day. I was 28, and you were much too young to fly so soon. You were singing to the masses. You were crying at the moon. Oh, you gave me Southern comfort and you made me feel alive. You were singing like a banshee in the wind when I arrived. You were dancing on the stage like some butterfly on fire. You were brilliant. You were flying so much higher. At the break, you leaned over and grabbed me by the hand and whispered in my ear, "We should go meet the band." Before we stood, you said to me, "One of us will make it." "It won't be me," you said. And I thought it was mistaken. I knew how much she drank, like everybody did. But my drinking was so hidden. I said, like, "What's that you said?" Later, I was sure I'd heard her words as she whirled by like a flock of birds bound for the sky. Oh, you gave me Southern comfort and you made me feel alive. You were wailing like a banshee in the wind when you arrived. You were dancing on the stage like a butterfly on fire. You were brilliant. You were flying so much higher. Not done. That's all for now. I have a little paper here that says jokes for new shows. The head nun says, "Afraid we found a case of syphilis in the nunnery." Young novitiate said, "Thank goodness, I was getting so tired of Chablis." Your secrets, by the talking of old age, your secrets are safe with your friends because they can't remember them either. People no longer view you as a hypochondriac, and there's nothing left to learn the hard way. Oh, yes. George Bernard Shaw and Winston Churchill. I thought I'd invite us to our gathering tonight. George Bernard Shaw is writing to Winston Churchill, and he says, "I am enclosing 2 tickets to the first night of my new play. Bring a new friend, if you have one." Then Winston Churchill wrote back to him and said, "Cannot possibly attend first night. We'll attend second, if there is one." Now let me see where we can go from here. There are a lot more here. Oh, I thought I'd read you this. It's sort of a backwards love song. In the ruins of, you've had old boyfriends, haven't you? Well, now they're very old. In the ruins, this is called In the Ruins of Your Beauty for MT. Those of you who know my history might know who he is, but maybe not. In the ruins of your beauty, I can see beyond the years to the bridge where we were standing at the start of all those tears, when your body was a signal to the lives we both would lead there together in the hurricane of willows and of weeds. 50 years ago today, my old memories hold the key. As you chased the clouds away, I saw what you could see, but even as we kissed beyond the pounding of the waves, I knew we'd ride the years and then regret we'd been so brave. To know the secrets, know the sins that led us to today with courage, we began to make the journey, walk and pray. We had a perfect start. Our romance could not stand. I was lingering. The heart stared back from sea and wind and land. And now your look reminds me when I left there in my youth, out of reach and out of vision, until now I see the truth, that we were meant to live far from that timeless beauty, foraging life among the broken rules, the loss of duty. The power still is haunting in your long-remembered face. The day was beaten gold as I gathered in your grace. The old, familiar tugging, keen and true and free and wild. Now I remembered everything. Your voice was kind and mild. Your face still burns my heart. Your passion not yet gone. And I know that you still love me, and I know I won't forget. Beyond our ruins. Let's see. I surely wrote a lot of them. You know who you are. You know who you are, like a flying bright light through my dreams, waking me at midnight to your face above mine, looking out at me from the window of the train, from the bank of clouds above Mount Shasta, for the 3rd time this morning, while the phone is ringing, while the shower is splashing, while the light is changing, while my toast is burning, while my eyes are yearning. You know who you are. I have sought you in the crowd of faces in every horse that races, for the finish line in every dream that finds me on the trail that winds through valleys blossoming with violets and columbine, in tides and time, in light and darkness, in joy and sorrow. You know who you are. Paradise. Paradise is ruined and the angel weeps, lost in the rains of a million tears, gathering pearls while the sad world sleeps through the thunderous storms of these years. Beautiful in all her loss, she plucks the harp her spells to ply, the bell, the flowers, and the cross surrender in the diamond sky. She sings the song that brings the dawn. She mends our hearts with threads of gold. She brings back every dream that's gone. She brings the hope that was foretold. I yield to all her beauty fair. I seek her in the near skyline. She is renewed like summer air, reborn, refreshed, resolved, refined. Move on, she says. Move on, she sighs. We are not lost. Your dreams of freedom must be heard across the snows, amid the frost. The eagle, now the soaring bird, will dig his talons into thieves who take the bright-voiced joy you knew. He'll right the wrongs and make us grieve and give us all the hope that's true. Or take us back to start again, to mend the ragged hearts of men, to seal the sacred promise thus. Carry on, for so we must. This is called Purple Heart. Coming into Dallas from the airport, twisting my head from the car, where is it? Where am I in relation? 55 years in time, half a century or more? It's over there by the shiny new skyscraper tucked in beside the old railroad lines. Over by the mission where the homeless man waits through days for the sound of the gun to explode, for a hand to help him by the flying traffic like junk left on the road. There to be polished to a sparkle, but it's not on this beat, it's buried in me so deep, the place, the time, the street, the broken brain, the broken head, the blood, the future, and the past, the prince, the king, iconoclast. I do not believe the popular lie, and I will not till I die, until the last, until death do us part. The country's Purple Heart. Any Fool, this is called. It's spring, and today my closest friend is gone. Daffodils are pouring down the lawn. The coffin draped with roses bears the burden of youth and friends and how it was begun. Pictures of the old girl by a river, the fishing line a sparkle in her hair, the stream a living path as old as summer. We knew she would not hesitate to dare. Her every breath was drawn with quaint conviction that she would be the one to never die. The singing in the church so sweet with harmony and questions never asked and never posed, going out that window on a Sunday. Forever breathing questions no one knows. The dawn would come and any fool would find that in the daylight, when the heart remembers, we all know they change their minds. Well, I thought we'd sing, "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the leaves are dying. It's you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. It's I'll be there in sunlight or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. There comes the cold coming back to say hello. I wonder if I can girl that I was. This is called The Angel. The angel comes through the door, the one you've seen before. She's shining in the light, so beautiful, so bright. In a graceful shaft, she hovers while you stayed beneath the covers, but today is different. You'd hoped and prayed that you would die, no more fight in the mind, no defense of any kind. The day is no different at all, but you answered the angel's call. Why today does she stay in sight? Why the sudden light? When all of these days you fought her, no matter how much you sought her. You weren't going to give in easy, but today your arms reach freely and suddenly you're in the light, you know it will be all right. You turn to the angel's face, fall into her arms with grace. At once you know you're safe, no longer the lonely waif. Wandering through your day, your life in disarray. Joy comes into view, it's all so strange and new, the joy that's coming through you. This is called A River of Stars. The stars fell out of a black sky, an owl watched in the trees. I saw my shadow dancing, moving with grace and ease, running through the willows onto the hills of home. I saw the old illusions dying, and I was alone. I heard the call of the eagle. I saw his wings spread wide. The air was bright with thunder over the countryside. Now, I said, fly higher over the peaks and hills. Take me to the summit wherever the goddess wills. The sun breathed fire and slaughter. The moon over land. Forever happened quickly. I took time in my hand, all alone in the summer. The wind had gone and died. I turned to my future. The past was tall and wide. You stood there smiling sweetly, as lovely as sin. You said, now all is over. It's time that we begin. I don't know if this is maybe a little too long to read. Well, I'll try. I could stop in the middle. There are no rules here. It's called Fern Lake. My starter husband and I. When I was 18, I had to have been 18, and my husband and I got, my starter husband and I, my first husband, my childhood sweetheart, we got a job in Rocky Mountain National Park, running a lodge in National Public Park, Rocky Mountain National Public. You know, they're destroying all the parks in the country. So I had to bake pies and bread on a wood stove at this lodge. My husband took the water down from the mountain and so on. And we had guests who took, the Fern Lake Trail was a 9-mile hike, and it reached 11,000 feet. So it wasn't a skimpy hike. It was 9 miles, and you were pretty tired when you were done. But I'll read this. It's called Fern Lake. We had no money that summer, just a wood stove that needed feeding. A little chess game sat on the table in the morning sun. He won every game. And at last I shouted, "Checkmate," we never played again. You know the feeling. A red martin came down by the lake each morning, his fur shining as he drank from the icy mountain water. Peter strolled up the trail to make sure the feed from the spring was bringing our water down. I finished baking bread and pies on that wood stove, slicing Spam and throwing peanut butter and jelly onto homemade bread roll sandwiches. We fed them to the hikers who made it up to our lodge. Fern Lake Lodge had opened in 1916, and 40 years later, here we were. The mountains about us were staggeringly beautiful, and evidently had always been there. Every week a pack mule hauled supplies up from Grand Lake and Estes Park with a handsome cowboy wearing chaps, a bottle of bourbon in his leather-gloved hands. We had no electricity, but there was a telephone on which I called my mother once a weekend, Daddy on the extension line. The rugged cabins were decades old, and the travelers who hiked the mountains were brave. It was 9.5 miles from one end at Grand Lake Lodge to the other end in the national park near the Rangers station. Gone now, my brother Mike told me recently, in the fire that ripped through Rocky Mountain National Park last summer. In the middle of that hike, I was 11,000 feet through Fern Lake meadows. Spring water ran through the pipes that came down from the mountain. It surged into the radiator that was strapped onto the back of the fireplace. And we had hot water for showers. The water poured out of upside-down buckets just outside the back door, where Peter split the wood for fireplace. After lunch we served, I would sit on the porch, playing the guitar and singing, "This land is your land, this land is my land." It always is an opportunity. To the island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. And Streets of Laredo. As I walk down in the streets of Laredo, as I walk down Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy drinking red whiskey. Never mind. We made love in that rickety bed by the lake in a little cabin of half-century old. It was almost near well, no, it was a half century. Now I'm 30 years old and half century old but the light from the pine trees in the air of the Rocky Mountains, paradise, still makes my heart leap. Now, I got a call last year from the head of the Rocky Mountain National Park committee who take care of the park. And he said, "Would you like to be a part of our group? Because we want you to be a representative of the national park." And I said, "That's wonderful. I would love that. I would be honored by that." And he said to me, "We all know about Fern Lake Lodge and how you were there as a kid," as I was practically a kid. And he told me, he said, "Well, you know, the lodge is gone. We tried to buy the lodge when we left and went back to Boulder where he was getting his degree. and I was working in a restaurant somewhere. And he said to me one day, we don't have any money. I said, I know. He said, I think you should get a job doing something you know how to do, like sing. And that was when I started it was 2019, so I would have been 20. I mean, it was not 2019. It was 20, what was it? It was 1958. Sometimes I get very confused by the centuries. This is way too long to sit. You can read it in my book. I hope you will. It's called, I'll tell you what it is. You can go and see where it is. Summer. It's called, that was, I just told you about that one. That was Fern Lake, which I read you. I remember that. And acquaintances. It's a long poem about my father. It's called Nez Perce. Well, I'll read you a couple of verses from it because it's about my father. It was 1910 in Idaho that a child was born in spring under Halley's Comet, same as young Mark Twain. It's pretty good company, that was all he'd say. Everything that stood in his way, he just outran. He dreamed of flying through the great pine trees, wearing beaded moccasins like jewels on his feet. He was born in the Nez Perce reservation, although they were not Nez Perce Indians, my father and his family. Gooding, Idaho, at the deaf, dumb, and blind school in Gooding, Idaho, he learned how to live like he meant it, going at life like a race at full dead heat. He sang like he knew every story. Daddy had a pocket of songs that would charm the Northwest, a voice out of heaven that would make sure he'd succeed. He said, work like a dog and live like some kind of royalty. Smile like you mean it and don't give away the plot. Do what you can to be a better neighbor. Tell him the truth and show him what you've got. Yeah. Well, and I'd love to read you this whole thing, but it's wildly long. But I'll read you a couple of verses because it's about a man named Jackson Sundown. Jackson Sundown actually was a Nez Perce Indian. He was the nephew of Chief Joseph. My father loved Chief Joseph and talked about him all the time. And so I had this feeling for the American Indians always from the beginning because of my father's experience and his discussion of Chief Joseph. Jackson Sundown was a rodeo rider. He was a Nez Perce Indian, and in 1918, he was a rodeo rider, and he also fought in the Nez Perce War in 1896 or something. And he was, as I said, he was a nephew of Chief Joseph. And he was this spirited, fabulous rodeo rider. And all the rodeo riders who went to the, what's it called? Not Stapleton. What's the place that makes all the beautiful blankets out there in the West? Pendleton. Thank you. Thank you all. The Pendleton Rodeo was an international rodeo. It was the best rodeo in the world. And he would ride there and other places. And whenever they saw him coming, they would drop out because he would win every ride. And he was located by a sculptor named Proctor. And the sculptor came and saw him when he was 53 and had quotes, unquotes, retired. And he said, I want to sculpt you. So he sat around for a year and sculpted him. And then he said, it was 1918 then, 1917. And then he said to Jackson Sundown, you have to ride again. I have to watch you ride. I have to see you ride in order to sculpt you. The sculpture that he made of Jackson Sundown was in the park in Denver, where I grew up half of my life. And I didn't know it was him, but it was a beautiful, beautiful sculpture of this great-looking guy on this great-looking horse. So this is the ballad. And so when he rode, Proctor said, "I'll pay for your entrance." And he said, "I can't do it. I've broken a lot of bones. I don't know if I can ride again." And he said, "You can ride, you can walk, you can run. I've seen you run around the farm." He said, "You can do it. I know you can do it. You always did it. There's no reason your body doesn't remember this." So he kind of blackmailed Jackson Sundown to go down to, what's the name of the place? Pendleton. And he rode. He rode a horse called Angel, and he was 53, and he won the International Rodeo at Pendleton in 1918. And there was an anniversary in 2018. I didn't know anything about him. I saw these articles in a lot of papers. Even the Times had something about him. They were celebrating his 100th year, and Pendleton was making a blanket in his honor. It's all red with the black figure of him riding this horse. It's on I bought one because there were only a few of them. So I bought it and put it on my couch at home. So I'll just read two or three verses. Born in Nez Perce, Idaho, an American legend's son, he grew up when the buffalo were running. Chief Joseph was his uncle. He rode ponies from the start. He had a way with horses. They understood he had a heart. He fought in the Nez Perce War with his uncles and his kin, the slaughter and the blood, and bluecoats winning. They chased him and his family 1,000 miles or more. Half were dead and half would count the score. When the war was over, he was 14, still alive. He fled north to Canada. With Sitting Bull, he'd strive. By 1885, he'd learned his deepest pride, all the horses he would tame, all the horses he would ride. He found himself a wife, riding fewer rodeos. Getting older had its price. At 52, he rode the Broncos in the Pendleton again. He was really 53. He came in second place. Oh, that was in 52. It was the year before. He rode in 53. In 18. Well, you didn't ride that. Anyway, I've made a mistake. Okay, so anyway, you'll see it in the book when you get it. And at one point, I have to write a song about it. Okay, there's the angel again. Well, I have to read you this. It's a little long, but I still have to read it. Do we have time? Okay. This is called Richard Farina. It was 1960, summer. I was living with my starter husband. My friend Richard Farina was married to Carolyn Hester, and they had rented a place on Martha's Vineyard with a lake and a garden. Richard said, "Come stay with us. Bring your bathing suits and not much else." We loaded Clark, our year-and-a-half-old baby, and Peter's younger sister, Hadley. She is still one of my best friends. My sister-in-law. I guess that's what that's called, isn't it? Anyway, Hadley and I are still like this. We went into our Chevy carryall and headed for the North Shore from Connecticut. On the ferry to the vineyard, we squinted into the sun and ate potato chips and drank Cokes and bobbed in the sea. Richard met us on the dock, Carolyn in tow. You know who Richard Farina was. He married Carolyn, but then he married Mimi Farina, Joan Baez's youngest sister, who was one of my best friends. And I also knew Farina before he married her. we headed north shore from Connecticut on the ferry to the vineyard. We squinted into the sun. And he met us at the dock. Carolyn in tow. They were brown as two nuts, eyes sparkling, long hair, prince and princess, royal folk royalty. They piled into our Chevy, and Richard said, "We have a surprise for you." We drove through Spartan tourist-filled Edgartown, where the flower boxes were full of purple flax and wild red and pink roses, and stopped at a quaint shop in the window surrounded by seashells and piles of T-shirts with logos of the vineyard and watercolors of ships and children with buckets of sand, and was hand-painted sign. There was a hand-painted sign. Carolyn Hester and Richard Farina, with special guests Bruce Langhorne and Judy Collins. I nearly fainted. Richard grinned and giggled and looked at me giddily. "I couldn't help it," he said. "A way to wipe out your expenses." I grinned too. We always grinned at Richard's antics. Then, and when he was married to Mimi Baez and tossed the roasted turkey out the window in the snow in Cambridge on Thanksgiving night for a joke, and when he would sing his songs to me, "He's the kind of guy puts on a motorcycle jacket and he weighs about 105. He's the kind of surfer got a daddy haircut and you wonder how he'll ever survive. But when the frost's on the pumpkin and the little girls are jumping, he's a hard-loving son of a gun. He's got 'em waiting downstairs just to handle his affairs, and they call him a spoonful of fun." I recorded that, and I recorded, "If sometime you can pack up your sorrows and give them all to me," which he wrote with Joan's older sister, Pauline, and on his sudden visits to New York, where he would stay over at my Upper West Side apartment. And we would go shopping at Zabar's, and Richard would put a smoked salmon on his head. We did sing the surprise show in Edgartown, Carolyn in her lovely high notes and Richard playing his sweet dulcimer bells in sunlight, and me singing while Bruce, sweet and talented, played his guitar. The little crowd did their best, and then we drove to Richard's rented cabin on the lake to sleep. Late that night, we all heard something go bump. Out sprang Bruce with the rifle provided by the landlord of said cabin. He shot a perfectly stunned rabbit, who provided our dinner of rabbit stew a la Hester the next night, which we ate after a day of messing about with a rowboat, also provided by the landlord. There was only one other boat on the lake, at least a mile away on the other side of that little lake, and somehow we managed to run into it. Hitting it broadside with many screams of, "Look where you're going, I don't believe this." At the oars, Richard couldn't stop. Little damage was done except to neighborly relations. Home at last, we could all laugh about it and remember it is one of the very best times we ever had. Go figure, we must all be slightly crazy, like Farina, my dear and beloved friend, who drank too much at his book party for Been Down So Long, It Looks Like Up to Me. 5 years later, he was married to Joan Baez's youngest sister, Mimi, and Farina got on the back of a motorbike. He was killed at midnight when the guy driving hit a sharp turn. Richard flew into eternity that night. Do you hear that? It's Richard. I still dream about him and about Martha's Vineyard. Truly had been truly wonderful times. I still miss him and his kind of crazy. This is called Grand Lake. Are we up to do it? Are we okay? We can do some more? Okay, you tell me when you think I should. Thank you. This is called Grand Lake. When I can't sleep, I go to the mouth of the Colorado River and the summer of '58, when the fish turned up their silver undersides for 2 weeks, and the pine trees swung up overhead, and the lake was smooth as silk when I fell off the water skis, and rough with big waves when I skied well. I go back to ironing the sheets and cleaning the cabins and playing the guitar and singing the old songs. The handsome guy from stables in Grand Lake would come by on his gelding with the soft leather saddle on a paint with a lariat, and he would whistle up to the screen in the room where I was dressed and ready in my boots and soft leather shirt. It was called jingling, and we would ride up to the meadows where the horses had spent the night in tall, green, miraculous grass, and we would bend them on our mounts. We would herd them on our mounts down to the stables in town, and by then I am peacefully, quietly, soundly asleep. Horses riding in the meadows, all's well with the world for a few hours this night. This is called I'm Over You, and it's for Gertrude Stein. I'm over you, I'm not over you. I'm over you, I'm not over you. I'm over you, I'm not over you. I never was over you. I'll get over you. I won't get over you, I can't get over you. I'll never get over you, I'm over you. I'm not over you, never. This is dedicated to the vanished Valaquez. The ghost of ruined gamblers, the pain of vanished lovers, the quiet in the violence and the silence in the storm. The feeling when you're flying and you know you're only dreaming, the quiver of the music, the bright morn. The whirling of the dervishes, the dances among the shadows, the memory of that winter when your carelessness was born. The kisses that we gave away with yearning for lost lovers we never had the heart for anyway. When it all came down to truth, we saw a smile that beckoned from the boat out on the river of our youth. We hitched a wagon to the team that pulled us to a mountaintop, surviving breathless visions in the air. We saw the stars that blazed away and dipped behind the moon, the stranger as he tiptoed down the stair. The creek that ran along the hill full of silver trout flashing in the water like the stars as the earth slid down the sun to block the light again, the vanished stories found in our memoirs. I've never read this before, and I don't know if it's proper to read it, but let me read it. It's called Guns. In high places and low gutters, ruby-paneled palaces and dark street corners, in offices and on the beaches in every century, in slaughter by mass decree, the brutality of the trenches and the sophistication of high office, guns are used to solve everything. On the streets, in the parks, in the schoolyards, in the kindergartens, the high schools, the offices of the manager who was recently fired and furious about everything on the planet. In the bedroom of the millionaire outside the slaughterhouse, beside the limousines and aimed above the heads of children in drive-by shootouts that can kill the child who's in the way. By the officer in a hurry with his gun loaded, murdering an unarmed civilian, fighting for his life on a dark sidewalk by the slow, wide river that slides on toward the sea. with its burden of corpses from the shootout a week ago, incidental, intentional, or accidental, planned and surprising, held in secret, locked in the closet in the box above the bedroom slippers, standing tall in the corner in the kitchen, loaded, sitting in innocence on the table by the glass beside the whiskey bottle. Near enough to the voices that rise in anger on Saturday night after quite a few drinks, and that party at the club, after which he has his hand around her hair and stumbles around the bed and reaches for the gun in the schoolyards, in the schoolrooms, by the water fountain, in the lunchroom, in the hallways, through the doors of the chemistry lab, where the little boy dies on the floor with blood pouring across the room. His brother huddled over his dead body among shards of glass, in the closet of a teenager who has gone viral on Facebook and social media to say he's going to murder every one of his classmates, in the high-powered rifles and rifles with bump stocks and the perpetual roll of bullets that never end, roaring into the crowd in a mass music festival in Las Vegas, out a window of a hotel room with soundproof glass. Guns. In rage and anger and frustration, in military action, in trouble, in drama, in high-wire tension, in guilt and innocence, time marches on, loaded with bullets and ready to fire. This is called St. Paul. It always seemed to take me such a long time to St. Paul. Time always seemed to stand still. I'd finally see the river, the cathedral on the hill where you and I would walk. The golden carriage atop the Capitol still looks over the Mississippi where your ashes drifted. We sent them downstream on a rainy night, one November 30 years ago. The city in which you died was named after Saul, who became St. Paul on the road to Damascus. He changed his mind. Everyone changes their mind, even you, my beloved. I love you. This is called Death Be Damned. I love you. Beyond the veil of tears, the shades of night that hide my eyes from looking down the shaft that leads to death without you. I never feared to die, but not to be here with you has ruined death for me that once reached out its arms of folded care, the soft embrace, the end a gentle space. I now scream no across the waves, across the years, across the river of our intertwining lives that flows in dreams and in my blood. I do not give a death. I do not give a damn for death, not this time. Across my living, breathing soul, I reach for you. I will not die and leave you here to love alone. So, death be damned. Is that it? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to have you join me as we leave. I want to just have you join me in one more song. Amazing grace, how sweet the harmony that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was proud, but now I see.
Judy, thank you so much. That was wonderful. This is.
Oh, I love doing it. It was great fun for me. I hope you all enjoyed it.
We'll just have a few minutes for questions here. I want to say Judy's book is for sale outside in the tent. We had about 100 copies donated. There's a book on the history of the International Poetry Forum where you can read about Judy's early performances. That will be over at this table at the end of the show. But everyone I've spoken with has been shocked that this is your first book of poetry. I think people think of you as a poet singer. So what's it like having this wonderful collection out in the world?
Well, it's, as I said, it was a result of my husband's idea that I should write all these poems, and which I did. And it's interesting because, and I believe, and I know that Sam has known this and shown this to you with the Poetry Forum for decades. Poetry is really part of the inner journey that we make. It's an inner journey, really. I mean, we do write it down, but the journey is something that we have to come to ourselves. And I don't know, I think a lot of people come to poetry later in life, and I think that's what happened to me. But I always have written, and because I've always written songs, I've always got things piled up. My first poem was written when I was in 5th grade. And it says, "Awake, little children, the day is bright outside," or something like that. It had 4 lines in it. And it was published in the Wee Bruin. That was the name of the school paper in my school in Los Angeles. I only came upon that recently, but I put it there so I could look and see that this had a start somewhere. And throughout, there was always a time when I wrote something with rhymes, and sometimes writing. I've written journals my whole. Well, first I started out writing things in high school and junior high and grade school, and then when I started going to a therapist, I started writing my dreams. I was ordered to do that. And so that started then the writing of the journals, which always have an aspect of poetry in them, because every once in a while you run off the page and start writing something that rhymes, and then you say, well, that's not part of the journal. And then, of course, I've written a number of books, as you'll see in this, starting with a memoir. I used to go to Caneel Bay in the winter time for a couple of weeks. For 37 years I did that. It was blessed. It's now been, Caneel Bay in St. John's has been blown to pieces. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's gone, as so many things go. And there was a couple down there who were both in the field of writing, and they kept saying to me, you should write a book about your life, because my father is very interesting, blind from the age of 4, and carried on a huge career in the radio. He had a radio show for 30 years, and he read everything on the planet, and he did everything, and he sang, and he was just brilliant, and his whole life was interesting. And so they kept saying to me, why aren't you writing about this? And so when I was about, when did I published it? I started writing it in 1984. The book about my life. My first memoir was called Trust Your Heart, and then I went on writing a bunch of books about other things, and so this probably makes the 12th or the 13th book of some kind.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
You have to warm up to poetry.
Sam Hazo had so many wonderful memories of your performances here in the 60s, and and it's funny, we were talking, I have my almost 3-year-old at home, and the first time we spoke on the phone, you and I was starstruck. I had my daughter in our basement listening to Judith on vinyl the previous day, right? So she's growing up, you're one of her heroes. Who are some of your literary heroes that brought you to poetry?
Oh, well, all the, William Butler Yeats, I mean, that goes without saying. Song of the Wandering Aengus was actually turned into a song called Golden Apples of the Sun by, what's his name? What's the oldest folk singer that you remember? Before Pete Seeger, before Woody Guthrie, who was it? Burl Ives. Burl Ives actually set 2 poems of William Butler Yeats to brilliant melodies. I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head, cut and peeled and so forth and so on. And then he wrote, I will rise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and da 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 da. Oh, da, 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 da. Anyway, it was Burl Ives who wrote those melodies. I didn't know that for a long time, but I finally found a list of some of his authorship of songs, or composer of songs, melodies for poems. Setting a poem to, my father used to read all kinds of poetry to people, as I said, and or maybe I didn't say, I said it somewhere. And what? I can't remember what.
Well, I'll ask about Leonard Cohen. You'd mentioned him, and he was actually scheduled to perform on this stage in 1968 at the Poetry Forum. That's right, and he was sick.
In 1968?
68. That's right. So he was
my
really
God,
young,
Leonard.
Incredibly young, and
he didn't?
He was ill. But when you came the following year to your second Poetry Forum performance, you did some of his pieces, but. It's incredible. It's so many people say that you're really responsible for him becoming a singer, and some people say the same about Bob Dylan as well. I mean, your influence has just been incredible.
Well, I had a lucky life because I reached out to people who had written a great song, and sometimes they hadn't been published or they didn't have a record label or something, and I did from '61. So I was always looking, always finding, and always presenting. And what happened with Leonard was that I think I told you that he came to my house, and what he said was, I can't sing and I can't play the guitar and I don't know if this is a song. And then he sang me, Suzanne takes you down to her place by the river. You can hear the boats go by. You can spend the night beside her. And so when I said, after he said that about it, I said, well, Leonard, this is a song. And I'm recording it tomorrow. And it was 1966, and it went viral. Everybody wanted to record it and sing it and so on. And he said to me, well, now you've made me famous. And I said, is that okay? And he said, well, yeah, but I don't understand why you're not writing your own songs. And so I went home and I wrote, what I give you since you've asked is all my time together. That was my first song, and I never have stopped. And also, I said to him, well, you're going to have to do something about your life. You're going to have to sing your own songs. He said, no, I can't. My voice is terrible. I said, it's not terrible. It's a little obscure. And I said, I'm going to take you to a big fundraiser that I'm doing. It was a big fundraiser for a radio station in New York called WBAI. WBAI is still going strong, by the way. So this big fundraiser, which was in 1960, I think it was 67. I don't think it was 66. I think it was 67. And I said, I have to take you, and you're going to sing. So he said, no. Then I said, yes. So he came with me. I pushed him out on stage with his guitar, and I was in the back, in the dressing room waiting. And he started to sing, and then I heard this kind of kerfuffle going on, and he came backstage sobbing. And I was told by other people who were sitting there and looking at it, what happened, that he just burst into tears and walked off the stage. And I said, well, you're going to have to go back. That's not a good excuse. Bursting into tears will get you nowhere with me. I'm the oldest of 5. So So I went out with him, and he started singing. Well, the place went crazy. And when that happens, you get it. And he got it. And he always sang his own songs from then on. But we did really good things for one another. We gave each other good advice. And he used to call me and read me verses from Hallelujah, like 10 or 15 verses. And he'd say, how do you like it? How do you like it? And I'd say, it's not up to me to like it. It's up to you to like it. And you have to figure out which ones you're going to use.
Incredible. So you created so much of our collective musical history, and it's amazing you've also been witness to so much of American history and music. I've heard it rumored that you were present when Mr. Tambourine Man was being written in the...
I'll tell you what.
Is this a true story?
I was invited to a party at, what's his name? Dylan's manager, Al Grossman. So Al called me. He was a friend of mine. He had a club in Chicago called the Gate of Horn. He started it in order to give a career to the singer who discovered Joan Baez, whose name I can't remember this minute. Anyway, so I knew Al Grossman forever. He was great fun. And he would call me and say, do you know who this Dylan guy is? And I said, yeah, this was in 61. And he said, well, I'm making tapes of this guy and sending them to the record labels and so on. And, they say he can't sing. I said, uh-huh.
Gosh, that's incredible.
So he invited me so I had started recording Dylan's music as soon as I found How Many Roads Must a Man Go Down. I read it in Sing Out, and I had known him when he was Robert Zimmerman, and I knew him when I was 19, and he must have been only 17 maybe, and he was hanging out in Denver trying to get a job at the Hootenannies, badly dressed even for the 60s, singing old Woody Guthrie blues, which I thought badly chosen, badly sung. So so the first songs I recorded were Fare Thee Well, My Own True Love, and of course Masters of War, of course, and the song about Dylan's dream, riding on the same train going west. I fell asleep to it, and so and then a couple years later, his manager called me and said, why don't you come up to a party? Susie Rodolo is going to be there, and Dylan will be there, and we'll have a good time. And Bruce Langhorne would be there. Bruce Langhorne was somebody that I knew very well. He played for Carolyn Hester, and Dylan was on that session too with Carolyn Hester, probably in '60 or something. Anyway. So I had recorded the songs and so on. So I went to the party. It was a lot of fun. He was there, and a few other people that I knew. And, of course, I got drunk. I mean, why wouldn't I? And I went upstairs to my bed, and I fell asleep. I actually passed out. But I woke up about 3 in the morning, and I heard this song. Ooh. How does it go? Do you want to go on the road? So I heard this da 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 coming through this castle that he had that had been stolen, or not stolen. I'm sure he bought it from Italy. They have a lot of castles there, and they don't care when you take them away. And so I crept down the stairs. I put on my little terry cloth robe, and I crept. I heard where it was coming from, so I followed this sound downstairs, and I sat on this bottom step of the stairs, and and listened through this blue door that was shut tightly. I listened to Dylan writing Tambourine Man. And my memory was really good in those days. And I knew it by, I was there for a couple hours. I listened to it. I knew that I had to get a hold of the lyrics. I don't know where I got a hold of them. I think one of my friends at Elektra, probably Ann Pertel, found it, got a hold of them from Bobby, and then I recorded it. I think I had it recorded before he did, but I could be wrong. And then, that's the way I found Both Sides Now, because it was 1967, and I was passed out, sound asleep, and the phone rang at 3 in the morning. It was Al Cooper, and I love Al Cooper. I was honored at a thing the other day, and they had made a movie about. They had filmed me at home, and they put a lot of things in the movie, include a picture of Al Cooper, which was very sweet, very sweet. So Al Cooper called me at 3 in the morning, and I said, "What are you doing?" He had my phone number, he knew it. And I said, "What are you doing? Do you need to go to a hospital or something? What's the matter? It's 3 in the morning and you're calling me." And he said, "Well, I found this, I met up with this girl at the club because she's crazy about Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And she's good looking, and she told me she wrote songs, so I followed her home. I figured I couldn't lose." And when she got home, she started singing these songs, and I thought to myself, Judy's recording next week. And then he put Joni Mitchell on the phone at 3 in the morning in 1967, and I said, "I'll be right over."
Pittsburgh is one of the great literary cities, the long history of poetry. Everyone loves you here, loves having you here. How's it been being back in Pittsburgh? And what's your...
love it.
It's been a delight to have you here. Just want to say before we give our final thank you to Judy Collins. Thank you to Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books, to Dr. Hazo, to all of our supporters at the International Poetry Forum, to Don, our sound guy, who's been doing this since Seamus Heaney and Grace Kelly and James Earl Jones came to the International Poetry Forum.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely wonderful. But and finally, thank you to you. Pittsburgh is a great city for poetry because it has an audience. So thank you all for coming, and please join me in thanking Judy Collins one last time.